you for joining us with SDI TV. We're here today, we're going to do a bladder conversion kit here on our WP PDS style shock. This was used for the older linkages as well as the non-linkage and newer bikes. We're going to do that bladder kit, so let's jump into this and we'll go step by step on this. On your stock shock, first step what we're going to do is there's a rubber gasket in here that allows you to get down to a 4mm Allen bolt to be able to release the nitrogen pressure in this. We want to make sure that we release the nitrogen pressure in this before we do any work on this. This is under nitrogen pressure and under gas pressure. We want to be safe with this. Again, 4mm bolt on that, and you'll hear a little hiss come out of that when we release that to be able to let the gas out. Now with all the gas out and released out of that, we're going to go ahead and remove the stock can. The stock can is actually Loctited quite a bit across the bottom rings of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little acetylene tank and we're actually going to heat up the bottom of the can just hot enough that you wouldn't want to touch it, not to any point that we want to melt anything, just to be able to release that red Loctite on there. You can use a strap wrench. We're actually going to use a pin style Spaniard wrench. There's a few other companies out there that offer that, but we're going to go ahead and heat this up. So again, we're just going to heat up right where the threads are, just keeping it warm. Again, once we start to unloosen this up, the red Loctite might actually start to thicken up and stick again, so we might have to go back and reheat it again. Now once this is hot, we're actually going to take our pin Spaniard. There's 2 set points in this, and go ahead and loosen up the can. Again, at any point, if it starts to get tough again, go ahead and reheat that up, because again the Loctite might seal itself back down. Once you remove the stock cylinder, you're going to get a little oil that might come out. That's okay, we're going to refill this back up with oil when we put the bladder kit back in. Just go ahead and set the stock can to the side, and we want to make sure that we check the O-rings, clean the threads, and get this prepared to put our SDI bladder conversion kit on. Now with our O-ring clean and all of our threads cleaned, we're going to go ahead and install our SDI cylinder on this. With the shock upside down, you're going to go ahead and see the SDI writing is going to be upside down on this. We're going to use a little red Loctite also when we install this. Just go ahead and put that right onto the threads of the shock. And just screw that down by hand. Now once we have the SDI cylinder all screwed onto the shock itself, we're going to go ahead and fill the canister all the way up with oil. Don't worry about overfilling it too much, because once we set the bladder in, it's actually going to purge the oil out to the level that we need. The next step on that is we're actually going to insert our bladder onto the physical bladder cap itself. We're going to take a little bit of our SDI slick grease, and we're actually going to run that on the inside edge of the bladder as well as the outside edge of the bladder as well. This is going to help with the seat of the bladder kit and make sure that we don't have any leaking on this. Once that's installed, we want to again make sure that we have a little grease on the physical threads. And now we're ready to be able to install the cap into the cylinder. Now that we're all greased up, we're going to install this in. We're actually going to set the bladder in, and you'll notice the oil will fill out. Once we get it down a little bit, we'll work it back and forth just slightly to make sure that we don't have any air bubbles in there. Now that we have the bladder installed and the cap started on the threads, we're going to go ahead and use our SDI compression adjuster tool to be able to tighten this down to 25 foot-pounds. Now that we have the bladder cap installed and we have the grease and the oil wiped down, we're actually going to take the shock out of the vise itself and we're going to turn the shock upside down. On top of these devil key shocks, there's a bleed screw right here. On this bleed screw, we want to make sure that the shock stays at the highest point position, and we're actually going to just release that bleed screw a little bit just so we can actually release any excess oil if there is any. Now that we have the shock upright, we're actually going to go ahead and release the bleed screw. Any excess oil that's inside the shock that's being pressurized from the bladder will actually release through this bleed screw. So we're just going to drain that off. We're just using a 5mm Allen here, and as you see as I loosen it, you're just going to get a little bleed off on that. We're going to take our SDI Schrader valve and we're going to insert that on the top of the cap itself. I'm going to run just a little bit of grease on that O-ring on right there again to make that better seal. This takes a 10mm socket to tighten this up. Just go ahead and tighten this up to firm just so the O-ring is snug down. Now that we have the Schrader valve filled in and we're using our SDI no loss nitrogen pressure gauge, we're going to fill the shock up to 130 psi. And remove our gauge. Once the gauge is removed, we can go ahead and put the Schrader valve cap back on. Now that we've got our bladder kit installed, go ahead and wipe this off, and we're going to go ahead and reinstall this back onto our bike. Again, this is the older style PDS shock. We do offer this now for the newer Explorer style PDS as well as the Linkage bikes. So check back with SDI TV for all those applications and those fitment videos.